Look, I was watching a video recently that came across one of my students had brought up to me. It was talking about two different types of games, one of them being control-based games and the other being a movement-based games. And these are two different distinctive styles of jiu-jitsu. Both are very important to be able to learn to definitely be at the top of the game if you're looking at a competitive level. If I were to have to pick one of the two to focus on, and I'm not looking to be at a, I'm not looking to be in a competitive situation, then I would pick control-based game over a movement-based game. Eventually you'll find that movement, as we get older, it becomes your ability to do that starts to shrink. But having control is primarily based off of the amount of connection that you have with your opponent. And I'll pull our chain and our lineage. Pedro Sauer is just an amazing instructor when it comes to that, and the information that passed down through him is primarily a control-based style game. And like I said, the main thing that you need to be able to be aware of that is the amount of connection. So when I'm talking to my students, there's like kind of three levels of understanding, or things that you need to control rather when you're about to either get into the match of a competition, or if you're faced in a situation where you would have to be in a fight. And the number one thing that I always tell all of them is you control your emotions first. Obviously, if you don't have control over your emotions, then you're going to make poor decisions, because they make unhealthy decisions when they're making them off of your emotions. Number two is controlling your base. That is probably the number one attribute that people that come in where they've had wrestling experience, or they just have a natural understanding of grappling, allows them to progress in the early stages really fast, especially if you find those that aren't even athletic, but just have a good understanding of their own structure. In fact, it is kazushi, or putting someone off balance, which is the number one thing that you have to do in order to be successful with any of your techniques, whether it be a sweep, whether it be a submission, a takedown, a throw. Getting that person off balance is going to, unless you're just overpowering someone, we're just talking about using jiu-jitsu in itself against jiu-jitsu, then base is your number one focus to start off with. Movement and strategy, I would give a movement-based game a leg up on strategy. So when a practitioner comes in, a student comes in, and they don't have a true understanding of their own base, and you can have a lack of understanding of base but still be a very athletic individual, and vice versa. You can not be very athletic but have a very good understanding of your own base. I would give a leg up actually to a movement-based game to forming strategy early on in your jiu-jitsu. Again, this is why I think it's very important to have a very good understanding of both of these to be successful and consistently successful at the highest levels. At our academy, we have high-level competitors, and it's not something, though, that our academy was driven by. We did it and started to compete more from camaraderie, challenging ourselves, and we found that a lot of my younger students enjoyed it to the point where they just started going more and more and more. And obviously, the more that you put yourself in those positions, the better you're going to get at it. And I just want to kind of explain maybe a couple things or give a visual of what I mean by control-based game. Control-based game would be more connection. One of the analogies I use with my students is that the more connected I am, the more data I can collect. So I tell them to imagine that their body is covered in like a caterpillar full of hairs. And the more hairs that you have connected to your opponent, the more data you can collect from them. So we do a lot of eyes closed sparring here, which makes it required to be connected to someone so that you can feel what they're doing. The lack of that, and you start using your visual as was the determining factor of what you were wanting to do and move or to collect your data, is going to be a little bit behind the mechanical aspect, because again, you're not collecting that physical data. However, your visual is allowing you to see certain things throughout the game or your role, and it makes you want to go and achieve certain techniques. So the strategy that you start building with a movement-based game comes a lot faster for those students when they come in versus the control-based game. And they're actually very successful at it because the majority of the time these guys are very athletic. And they're fulfilling in what gap of understanding that they have with a controlled-based game with athleticism. And there's nothing wrong with that. But to be clear, if we're just looking at jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu, you're slowing down the progress of understanding the mechanics themselves. So here's just a kind of example, and from here, can you lay down? I'm going to be in your guard to start off with. So connection here, obviously, we want to be postured inside of a guard. And when we were initially taught to pass a guard, whether it would be with a leg up or just starting to move a knee to the center so that I can create a wedge to open her legs, one of the first things that we were taught was to hold our hips to the ground so that we can slide our knee into the center of the sacrum, and then I can start to wedge myself back into her ankles. Well, this is an example of connection. I do have connection here, but now what I'm doing is I'm forcing her to be connected more to the ground than me. So the ground is collecting more of this data than myself. So instead of pushing down, which this works, okay? However, instead, if I actually grab this material and I pull up on it and drive my elbow down, I can control her hips just the same here, and she can't move side to side, and this is already starting to feel uncomfortable for you. So I can start to wedge my elbow inside of her thigh by pulling up on this and pushing down. I have a lot more connection here on my arm than I would here pushing down. So this is just a primary one example. Yes, I'm controlling the hips here, but as soon as I start to move, or even me just pushing here, she can start to slide. Do you feel like you control your hips a little more right here than if I control her hips by pulling up? All right, so this is just one example, a small example. Look, here's another example. I'm gonna get in my guard. Last night we did the scissor sweep in a series based off of that. And we'll just do fundamental or one of your basic grips. So one side of the body I'm controlling here around shoulder, collarbone for the lapel grip. And there's a number of different grips that you can have just to make sure that this person doesn't post on here. All right. By controlling back here, I can start to have more of her connected to me as well. Now, here's an example of movement-based. I put my legs down quickly and slide my body out. You can see I have no connection, and she can lift her body up and down. But if I connect to my opponent and not put my feet on the ground and put my weight on her, and then I start to hip out, she was not able to move in the process of that because I had so much connection to her. Now, this is one of our frames. I still have connective grips, and now my knee slides in. So a lot of people are floating with this knee when they do a scissor sweep. Well, here we want to look and add more connection. If I just hold here and try to control her with my hand, it's pretty loose. If I try and I'm not connected with my knee, then I can push and pull, but this is still not as strong of a connection as I could make. But now when I connect my arm to my leg and then my knee into her chest and I pull the slack out of it, now I can control her with my knee, and I have so much more control than if they were separate. So this is another prime example of having more connection to having more control. So when you are When you are practicing, one of the ways that we do this here at our academy to get people a good understanding of that is, like I said earlier, we do a lot of closed eye sparring. We'll do drills with our eyes closed, and this forces the person to find and touch the other person to find out where they want to move versus looking and just based off of our visuals. Try that, and I hope you have fun.